Klay Thompson officially leaving the Golden State Warriors. It is the end of an era. The Splash Brothers no more, unfortunately. What's next for the Dubs? Could they realistically bring in Lauri Markkanen from the Utah Jazz? What other options are out there? And just let's remember the good times with Klay Thompson and all he's done for the organization. That's coming up now on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Thank you all for being here for a live edition of Locked On Warriors. I'm your host, Kylen Mills, a play-by-play broadcaster and host for NBC Sports Bay Area, the Big Ten Network, and a number of other outlets. Alongside me today is Chalie Walter, the former KPIX sports anchor, 95.7 The Game host, and much more. On today's show, the end of an era. Klay Thompson moving on after 13 years with the organization, drafted in 2011. So this is officially it. The big three has been broken up. What's next for the Warriors? What does that mean? Who could be the starting two guard? What are some of the options to bring in via trade? Because I think free agency is going to be tough for the Warriors at this point with where they're at in the salary cap situation. We're breaking it all down. Chuck, it's been a big day. I'm still trying to process. How's it going?
It's a day that basketball fans will remember for forever. But unfortunately, the best things usually come to an end, and usually when they do, Kobe, Shaq, much larger, Tom Brady, Belichick. You saw The Last Dance. I don't think Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were eating Portillos after they were done playing together, but this is what usually happens, man. Usually it gets a little rocky at the end. There's never a perfect scenario to part your ways, but a hat tip at the end of the day. The Warriors, they didn't owe Klay Thompson anything, but they owe him one thing, and that's a hat tip on the way out, because what a career in the Bay Area.
Yeah, the organization did release a statement about Klay Thompson, basically saying that they are going to retire his number. Thompson, a four-time NBA champion, was drafted by the Warriors back in 2011, a five-time All-Star, two-time All-NBA selection, and one half of the Splash Brothers. At the end of the day, Steph isn't where he is without Klay Thompson. That's something that needs to be said. By the way, appreciate everyone joining us for the special live edition. If you have comments, feel free to drop them below. At the end of the episode, I'll try to toss some of them out there, address any questions you guys have. Also, someone was asking about Cyrus. He did start a new channel, but appreciate you sticking here on Locked On Warriors. I will be continuing to carry the legacy on and to bring you guys the best content 5 days a week. Right now, though, a lot to process with Klay Thompson moving on. We got to look back. We got to start at least by looking back at exactly how this came to fruition. Do you place the blame on the front office? Do you place the blame on Klay Thompson? Is this simply a business decision that needed to happen? So this all started last season. I've seen a lot of people bringing up the Golden State Warriors prior to this past season offered Klay Thompson a 2-year, $48 million deal.
Allegedly.
Reportedly, he decided to take a chance on himself at the end of the day. Klay Thompson said, yeah, I'd rather wait around. He said, no, I'm going to see what's out there. Let's see how this next year goes. And he had a down year. Now, that's by Klay Thompson standards. He still shot more than 38.5% from beyond the arc, averaged around 18 points per game. Numbers, again, shooting numbers weren't terrible, more than 43% from the floor, but it was a down year by his standards. The Warriors now are even tighter than ever in the salary cap. They're in a different situation than they were a season ago, where they need to make a big-time move to bring in a secondary scorer who can play alongside Steph. And the situation just isn't the same. They couldn't offer Klay Thompson the longevity that he wanted. What I've heard is that Klay Thompson wanted 3+ years. That was more important to him than the dollar amount, than the price tag of the deal overall. That's exactly what we saw in him going to the Dallas Mavericks team. Reports also out there, he took less than even he was offered by other teams in free agency because he wanted to be with a team that's a contender. And also reportedly, He was interested in some of the tax breaks in the state of Texas. That one raised my eyebrows a little bit because I think he's going to be just fine. But it was a 3-year, $50 million deal that brought Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks, breaking today, according to a number of sources. Just looking back, do you blame the front office for not doing more? Do you think Klay Thompson was too prideful, or was this a situation where this is what's best for both sides? And feel free, if you have any thoughts, to leave them in the comments as well.
I think it's best for both sides based on what I've gotten from reading the traditional, news articles where there's no, no speculation or anything
No
like
bias.
that. Yeah, no bias, whatever. But hearing some of the reporters that are digging down a little deeper, I heard Slater today on Ryan Russillo, and it just sounds like, the Warriors could have potentially at least had talks with Klay, because it didn't seem like they even had talks this offseason. They could have at least had talks with them if they truly wanted them. And I think right up until he unfollowed the Warriors on Instagram a couple weeks back, month back at this point, time flies, I think he may have listened, but the time kept ticking. The Chris Berman, tick, 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 tick. The Dubs said, we'll get to it. He said, nah, you won't get to it. I'm good. But I hope tonight he's thinking, damn, it's been fun. I hope everyone's been thinking that. Leave your best Klay Thompson memories in the chat room. But all good things come to an end. I said it earlier. Brady and Belichick came to an end. You don't ride off into the sunset. This is sports. This is a business. This is life. Things change. And I will say, one of these days, they'll get over it when emotions die down. Everyone will move on. And but I would imagine right now the pundits probably think that Klay's in a better spot to win a championship. That's the big thing. How are the Warriors going to move on from this and get better? Because they're definitely not better than they were 24 hours ago, or at least, April.
No, the Warriors still have a lot of roster tinkering to do to be better than they were this past season. I don't think they're there. We're going to touch on a signing they made today in DeAnthony Melton, which I think is a good move, but they're still waiting for that big piece. There is still a big hole left, and now an even bigger hole with Klay Thompson moving on in this roster. I know some people are saying there's frustration because this was a sign and trade, first of all, and there were 3 teams involved. The Warriors ended up getting 2 second-round picks, a 2026 and a 2031, which is like a 14-year-old right now, in exchange for Klay Thompson. So some folks frustrated, but because they do receive an exemption, a trade exemption, that means that because they moved a piece that had a large salary and they didn't get much in return, they now get $15.9 million they can spend in another trade deal. Not in free agency, but in a trade deal. As far as why it's like that, the salary cap, the trade, like the NBA is the most complicated rules of all time. It's
so
insane. Confusing. But what I can tell you for sure, in talking,
we're talking aprons nowadays.
Aprons so the Warriors do need to be below the first apron. They are. But when you're talking about more money to work with, however, you pointed out, Chuck, that 75% of those exemptions and that extra money, basically they can spend in another trade because of this trade, don't get used. And the Warriors haven't used it in the past. So it's hard for me to be really optimistic that they are going to be able to translate the extra money that they have available now to make another trade, because they only got 2 second-round picks in exchange for Klay Thompson. They have to do something with it for this to be worth it. Otherwise, this is a massive failure. And I look at what they could have done with Chris Paul. They cut him. Yes, that does offload the $30 million salary, but could you have gotten something in return? It's a big question.
You could have. You could have. It was
so.
Zach LaVine, right? It was Zach LaVine. If you were willing to pay a little bit more for LaVine as compared to Wiggins, I think looking at that deal, the Warriors probably thought that it just made more sense to keep Wiggins at a lower cost than to bring in LaVine. And that's the big domino that I think needs to fall. Is I would imagine something's going to happen with Andrew Wiggins. I would think. I mean, I know there was some smoke around it a couple of days ago where they were actively shipping them. I don't know how this changes things, but Lauri Markkanen, that's what seems to be the move and play here. Lauri Markkanen or bust, some people say. Others say ride the youngsters. Let's see if Kuminga can be that number 2. Others say you're absolutely crazy thinking that way. Warriors can't win a championship that way. And others say get John Taffer and shut the entire thing down. But no one says that, because you can't, because Steph Curry, he's still in his prime. He is still in his prime.
So Douglas Mike's in the chat is saying you can't trade Wiggins for Zach LaVine. And I am going to die on this hill. I would have done it if you're talking about Zach LaVine and a future first round pick. So there have been a number of different rumors circulating about exactly what the Bulls were willing to offer, but a lot of reports are saying they were looking at a package, not just a player for player deal, that it would have been Zach LaVine and a future pick for. And then also part of that report said either Chris Paul or Andrew Wiggins. It didn't say both combined, which is what I initially thought is what was on the table. But then I've also read things that have said it would have been either or. If it was either or, that's mind-blowing. But regardless, Andrew Wiggins averaged 13 points per game this past season, shooting numbers down across the board, has not been as elite defensively as he was since 2022. Better defender than Zach LaVine, no doubt. But we have to do something to bring in a big time secondary scorer. Zach LaVine does come with some injury issues, but I'm just saying, if they're throwing in a first round pick, a guy who just 2 years ago was averaging 27 points per game on ridiculous shooting splits, like just under 50, 40, 90, you got to think about it. A lot of folks I know are not big fans of LaVine, though, but I'm just saying, I would have at least heard that out. If you're throwing in a first round pick, I don't think it's a bad move. But we're going to get into that and much more because right now I've got my sights set on Lauri Markkanen. I think that would be a great addition. Michael Bridges is off the table. The Warriors failed in trying to trade for Paul George, which I think was a big bummer, even though he's a player who's older at 34 years old, was very healthy this past season, is definitely a bona fide secondary scorer. So that's one where you would have liked to see that come to fruition. Now that it won't, if the Jazz are willing to hear teams out, I think the Warriors have to do what it takes to sign a Lauri Markkanen. And we're going to get much more into that coming up here on the show in just a few. Well, it's that time of year. NBA season officially over. Everyone's sad. You do have the WNBA in action. You've got MLB in action. There's also the Olympics coming up right around the corner. And if you want to make watching those sports a little more interesting because, they're not quite as interesting as the NBA, you can do that by betting on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from who's going to hit one out of the park, Caitlin Clark going to score 30 in her next WNBA game, all kinds of things like that. And I know, Chuck, you were looking at a couple plays that you like for today as someone who is all into baseball. For me, I'm just waiting for basketball to resume. What do you like right now that you could put your money on in terms of the baseball scene?
All into baseball is a stretch, but I do like betting on FanDuel. And I'm going to go with a 2-leg parlay here. Massive juice parlay that comes down to minus 104. Aaron Judge to win the AL MVP, Arson Judge, and Shohei Ohtani to win NL MVP. Combine that thing, comes out to minus 104. So you're basically betting on whether they will stay healthy, because if not, they're probably going to be your MVPs. I like it. I think it's a nice little futures bet.
All right, well, there you go. I know, folks, people are commenting, WNBA, listen. WNBA is entertaining. Don't knock it till you try it. Give it a watch. But whatever you're watching in terms of sports right now, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, so what's next for the Golden State Warriors? Klay Thompson, moving on. I think you've got to erect the statue outside. They already released a statement thanking Klay for all that he's done. They've said they're going to retire number 11. To me, that wasn't in question, but I do think you've got to not just tip your cap, but say a big thank you to Klay Thompson for all that he's done and all that he's brought to the Warriors organization. I think it's unfortunate to see the relationship fracture and end the way it has. He did post, Thompson did a story on Instagram saying, thanks to the Warriors and that kind of thing. But, there definitely is a sour taste in his mouth, I think, because of the way that this whole thing transpired. Just a week ago, there were reports that the Warriors hadn't officially offered him a dollar amount because they're waiting to see what's going to shake out with everything else going on in free agency as they're trying to work some trades behind the scenes. And I was told they were not willing to go to 3+ years. Klay Thompson wanted 3+ years, even if he would have taken less money, which is what he ended up doing. Drop a comment in the chat. Do you think the Warriors should have gone with 3 years or given Klay Thompson a 3-year+ offer, or was this the right move? I understand it from a business side, but there's still a little bit of a nostalgia factor. If you're a Warriors fan, like to see the big three be able to retire as Golden State Warriors, been with the organization for 13 years, there's got to be a little bit of sadness in seeing that dream go to the wayside.
He's a legend. Simple as that. I mean, 13 years together. Fans that saw him in third grade play together for the first time are now, out of college. So life came at you fast, and 4 championships later, I don't know what you do from here. I think you go out there and you get a star. They've been fishing right now for some big fish, with Paul George, Zach LaVine, some others in the mix, but you got to hit something. If not, you're expecting Jonathan Kuminga to be your clear-cut number 2, I would think.
He's not ready.
Unless they think that Podziemski, who I really like, by the way, and the chat may disagree with me. I know I've heard people out there saying they think Moody's a lot better than Podziemski. I like his game. I think he's crafty. He plays a lot bigger than his size in the paint. He kind of slows down the game. And then he's got a nice he kind of has that Jordan Poole step back 3 that I like. And the percentages say that he's good. He's gotten better every year since, his freshman year at Illinois, and has a lot of talent. So don't sleep on Podziemski. Is he the future? Should he be the Robin right now, the Batman? I don't think I go that far. Right now, Warriors are trending towards not a great basketball team as the roster is currently constructed. What does Dunleavy do? How does he find a rabbit in the hat and pull it out? Because there are only so many moves it seems like you can make.
The options are getting smaller and smaller by the day. The Paul George thing, the Clippers rejecting the trade, was definitely a big disappointment. It's also interesting to hear more and more reports that teams are going to do whatever they can to block the Golden State Warriors. That's also something that has to be acknowledged. Teams do not want to help this Golden State team get better. You look at what happened with the CBA, the restrictions in the salary. That's not helping the Golden State Warriors. I have been an advocate for a long time that there should be exceptions in the salary cap for players that you drafted and developed yourself as an organization. That has to be something that's rewarded. Homegrown players. You don't see teams do what the Warriors have done with a Klay Thompson, for example, who was drafted, with a Steph Curry, who was drafted by the organization, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney. I think that there needs to be something built into the CBA, but instead it came crashing down on the Golden State Warriors, and supposedly they want to help small market teams. No, I think it was ridiculous. And because of that, the Warriors' hands were a little bit tied when it came to negotiations this season.
Oh, you were tossing it to me.
This is a conversation. That's how this works.
Yes, that it is. Look, at this point, Dunleavy's in a tough spot. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is an organization, and not really Dunleavy. He hasn't been at the helm long enough, but he's been in the mix to make some of these decisions. But they've missed out on quite a few things in recent years. They've made a lot more bad decisions than good decisions, it feels like, not to take away from all the success that they've had. But dating back to, picking James Wiseman, and maybe even before that, I mean, if you could go back in a time machine, it's very simple in that position. You're trading away that pick there, regardless of whether you believed in James Wiseman or not, just because of the timelines there. But clearly there wasn't a lot of faith that Klay Thompson was going to get back to the point where he's even at now, because they used that pick in that situation. But looking back on that was tomfoolery, in my opinion. Paying Jordan Poole all that money that you paid him right then when he was hot, I thought that was a little bit silly. The trade for Paul, I mean, the dump, it all just, I don't know, Kylen. I don't know. It seems like the decisions have not been amazing lately.
There definitely are people who are suspect when it comes to Mike Dunleavy Jr. He's going to need to pull a rabbit out of his hat to win over this fan base, because I'm doubting right now. I'm going to be straight up. I am doubting what this man is capable of. What is he doing in these negotiations to try to bring in that secondary score? We have yet to see the fruits of his labor and what he's supposedly doing behind the scenes. Something has got to give. The Warriors, I tweeted this, and I hope this isn't the case, but the offseason so far is giving. Well, we believe we have the pieces on this roster to have a very competitive team come the postseason.
Yeah.
If you see my fingers, I'm putting them up in quotations because someone on Twitter made a comparison to what the San Francisco Giants have tried to feed the fans the last couple of seasons.
People, yeah.
We believe we have the pieces in place. That cannot be the story this season for the Warriors. They need to make changes. Bottom line, even if the young players make major strides, even if Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, I don't think that's enough. It's not enough for this team to win a title. Steph Curry isn't getting any younger. Unless you're at the point right now where you think there aren't any targets out there, but I still think there's a sliver of hope. I want to talk about Lauri Markkanen in our next segment. But I don't think we're at the point yet to throw in the towel and say total rebuild. Let's just call it a wash.
Well,
Let's
you can't.
let the young guys develop. And hey, let's be okay with maybe being a playoff team and ultimately retooling for the future now while Steph is still on the payroll.
Do you have to get to a break, or do I have about 15 seconds that'll turn into about a 2-minute rant right now? That's the issue on the show. We got to get to so many breaks. But Lauri Markkanen, Kylen, you've been talking about that name for a long time. It really does feel like the Warriors have to go out there and make a splash, or they are very confident in the fact that their young guys are going to grow up and be really high-level players very soon, because Steph Curry's only got so many years. Like you said, he's not getting any younger. He's one of the greatest superstars of all time, and you would hate to see him go out with play-in teams for the next few years. Anyways, to break.
Well, that's where the Warriors are at right now. What targets do they have left? What are their options as far as what's next? If the roster were to stay where it is, Brandon Podziemski is the presumed starter. And for folks who weren't able to tune in to NBC Sports Bay Area, some of the other outlets that were covering other news besides Klay Thompson, because this was such a big story today. The Warriors did have a head of summer league immediate availability where we heard from Brandon Podziemski, and he talked about how important this summer and this offseason is for him because he is expecting a bigger role. He talked about how he's been speaking with the organization about handling the ball more and being more of a facilitator, working on developing that skill set, I think, which was already very good. But he was asked flat out, like, listen, are you expecting to be a backup point guard, or are you expecting to be a 2-guard this upcoming season by Dalton Johnson of NBC Sports Bay Area? And he said that his conversations with the coaching staff have indicated that he would be playing more of a 2 role, which is very interesting to me. I see Brandon Podziemski based on the size, based on the fit with him and Steph Curry. I think they're both small and defensive liabilities. I don't love the two of them starting alongside each other, the 1 and 2. I see him being a more point guard, at least long-term in the NBA. Pods, though, in talking to the media today, indicated the staff, at least based on conversations right now, is looking at him still playing the 2, which is what we saw last season. Brandon Podziemski started when Klay Thompson was moved to the bench during the second half of the year due to dealing with some struggles. For a reminder for folks, Brandon Podziemski in his rookie year averaged just over 9 points, nearly 6 boards per game, loved the rebounding ability, 3.7 assists per game, really good assist to turnover ratio. It was over 3-1, which is extremely impressive, especially for a young player and rookie coming in, adjusting to the league. Pods is just 21 years old. So there's so much to like about his game. Do I like him starting at the 2-guard next to Steph Curry? I don't love it. And if you're bringing in a Lauri Markkanen, you're not bringing in a 2-guard. So what's going to be that backcourt combination? I personally like Moses Moody. I know that's something a little bit divisive, and we're going to talk about Lauri Markkanen as well. But if he is the target, let's say the Warriors do trade for Lauri Markkanen, what's going to be the backcourt? I think that it's a defensive liability to have Pods and Steph Curry as the starting 1 and 2. And I love Pods already has good ball handling abilities. He's a good facilitator. I think his long-term play is definitely a point guard. What's your take on that whole back and forth conversation?
My take is you led me exactly into the next guy we were going to talk about, DeAnthony Melton. The report's saying that the Warriors got him for 1 year. That's your number 2 guard right there. I mean, Podziemski, could he play the 1? Sure. I like to think of him as an old combo guard. We never use that word anymore in basketball. It was like, I feel like in the early 2000s on Rivals, you'd see someone's, recruiting page and they'd be the combo guard, and you just didn't really know what he was. And that's kind of what Podziemski is to me. But DeAnthony Melton, don't sleep on him. I mean, he's been good the last few years. With the Sixers last year, only played in 38 games because he was injured, but 11 points, 3.5 rebounds. I mean, people were excited about Lindy. You should be excited about DeAnthony Melton if that's the case, and he actually is on Golden State when all this thing is said and done, because he's had some good seasons and, super athletic, really long arms, helps you defensively. Not a big guy by any means at just 6'2", or I guess 6'3", but has long arms, a really good story out of USC. And I think he helps you. So Warriors, addition by less money and maybe less heralded players can get the job done, considering you still have the greatest superstar of this era, or at least, arguably for sure, in Steph Curry. And you still have Draymond Green, who plays so well with Steph, and you add in some wild cards and, guys that can step up their game, like a Bajemski or a Kuminga. And maybe that's just me wearing the rose-colored glasses, and they're actually trending towards
rose-colored glasses
being absolutely atrocious, which is very possible as well. But I don't know. They definitely need to make more moves, but there are people out there that are saying Markkanen doesn't move the needle. What's Markkanen going to do? Is it going to turn you from a play-in team to a 5 seed? Like, that doesn't get the job done to me. I don't know what the right move is here. And a typical time period, you would think that maybe it's time to retool and, get ready for the future and try to change things up and end an era, but you can't.
It's a disservice to Steph Curry. It makes me mad.
You can't do that to Steph. You gotta go out there and try to get some big time players. And Markkanen's one of a few that you can go out there and get. They tried with George. They were at least in the mix with some others, but yeah, it's a tough situation, because you saw, like, when the Spurs dynasty or their mini dynasty ended, like, they've been bad for a long time, because that's what usually happens. Like, the Warriors could theoretically gut the entire thing and turn into the Oklahoma City Thunder and just have a dynamite future years to come. But they're not going to do that, and they can't do that. You can't do Steph Curry like that. So they got to go out there and get someone. It's as simple as that.
We can't run it back. For folks who are unfamiliar, the particulars, the Warriors are signing, or did sign, De'Anthony Melton. I'm not positive if the deal is finalized. Of course, as these conversations and reports are coming out, there's a little bit of a time lapse before they sign on the dotted line. But it's a 1-year, $12.8 million deal on the mid-level exception, which is a positive. Melton shot just under 37%, or is shooting rather on his career, just under 37% from 3, which is good news, because again, losing Klay Thompson, they have to look for some shooters who can space the floor alongside Steph. Based on what they've had in terms of their depth and players coming in off the bench, they haven't had any great real floor spacers as backup options as well, which you don't love to see. The other thing about Melton, though, is that he is a versatile defender and a good defender. Not the biggest, 6'3", but still going to be good in terms of perimeter defending, good point of attack defender, 26 years old. So not one of the old pieces that we're talking about, someone who should be able to shoulder a little bit bigger of a load. The Warriors have to get younger. They have to get bigger. So for me, I'm okay with signing a 26-year-old who could also possibly work into a combo guard role, as we're talking about Brandon Pajemski as well, maybe being able to slot between the 1 and 2. I think that's possible for Melton. But the problem is, again, you're talking about De'Anthony Melton starting 1 and 2. It's a very small backcourt if he's starting next to Steph Curry. He's a better defender, so I like that. That's positive. I think Pods needs to make some strides defensively. Yes, he took a lot of charges, but that doesn't define whether you're a good defender in this league. And I actually was watching some film recently on Pods. There's just times where he's missing assignments. He's a little bit late on rotations. I watched one where he's running back in transition defense and just not guarding anyone. When you're running back in transition, you got to sprint A, and then B, you got to pick someone up. You can't just be running in a straight line. So I still think there's room for development for him defensively. De'Anthony Melton's a good defender, so I like that. I don't know. I don't feel great. I don't really feel great about any of the 1-2 backcourt options the Warriors have currently, except I think Moses Moody gives you a little bit more size, a little bit more length. He can hit the 3 ball. I don't think he's gotten his fair shake in terms of long-term opportunities and being able to play over longer periods of time where he can really get comfortable and see what kind of impact he can make. Because when you're getting DNP'd night after night, thrown back in the mix, you play a ton, you're DNP'd again. There's a lot of push-pull there that makes it difficult for a guy to really carve out a role. Give him the opportunity. I really hope this is the season that Moses Moody balls out. I would love to see him get some opportunities to start and play for longer stretches of time. He needs to be playing 25 a night, in my opinion. We'll have to see. That leads us to Lauri Markkanen. The final thing that we should touch on. The Utah Jazz are willing to hear out teams when it comes to possibly trading. Initially, it was said that the Jazz wanted to keep Lauri Markkanen, but this is a Jazz team that is still more than 1 or 2 pieces away from being contenders. And they're in a situation where Lauri Markkanen is going to be a free agent next offseason. And he is going to be expecting, or deserving, I should say, of a massive contract. Markkanen coming off his first All-Star season, putting together incredible numbers. I can pop up those specifics here in just a second. But right now, he's only due $18 million on the last year of his contract. So you can still trade him right now where you're going to get something for him return if you're the Utah Jazz, versus having to sign him to a massive deal in a year when you expect that he'll go somewhere else. And again, this is a Jazz organization that's still multiple pieces away from being contenders. So it makes more sense for them. He may have more value as the missing piece to another organization's team, whereas they can bring in multiple different pieces or more building blocks for the future. So this is something very realistic the Warriors could target, because he doesn't have a huge salary coming in this next year. And then looking ahead to next offseason, the Warriors could possibly sign Markkanen because they would have bird rights. And bird rights means the Warriors can sign one of their own free agents and not have that go against their salary cap. Basically, whatever they sign him for would not necessarily mean that they're over the tax apron or into the luxury tax, which would be huge. So this could be a huge win and a huge get for the Warriors in terms of play. I know I'm going on a rant. In terms of play, Lauri Markkanen, a 7-footer who can stretch the floor, can hit the three ball. He's not a traditional center. He's not going to be a real banger inside, and you're looking for some great rim running big, not necessarily rim runner, but fairly mobile, definitely mobile for a 7-footer. But someone who can step out and hit the three ball from down low, space the floor. I would love to see it at this point. I think based on the Warriors' options, this is the best one they got.
Yeah, and most improved player in 22-23, which means he's kind of hitting stride, when he's healthy. He played in 55 games last year, but 23 points, 8 rebounds, 7 feet, as you mentioned, can hit the three clip at a three ball at a very high clip, and a good free throw shooter. Kind of fits the mold of Quentin Post. It's like the Warriors are trying to get a few of those guys. What was he from three last year? Like 39%, 37.5% for his entire career. So Markkanen's a really good player. Don't get me wrong, but I could see this going one of two ways. I could see it working and him being like a really good Robin to Steph Curry's Batman, and giving Curry one final push with some really good teams. Like when, Kobe switched things up and finally got Pau Gasol in there and Meta World Peace. And they kind of just mixed up the formula, and they were still able to get it done and get back on top of the kingdom. But I could also see it going the other way. And in 4 or 5 years, you're looking, at Markkanen, someone that just, is he a budding star or is he not? And if he's not, then you had an opportunity here to really retool the roster and get very young and get a lot of draft picks and get things that are going to set you up for the future. But the issue is it all comes back to Steph Curry. You can't do him like that. They're not going to trade him. He's not going anywhere. He likes the Bay Area. So, yeah, if you believe in Markkanen and like that skill set and aren't scared off by the fact that he's played less than 55 games in every single one of his seasons but a couple, he's had seasons of 52, 50, 51, and 55. If that doesn't scare you, then sure.
It'll be interesting to see how you'd fit him in with the lineup, because you've got Trace Jackson-Davis in the mix, who could be your 5 coming in off the bench. You've got Draymond Green and then Jonathan Kuminga. Do you slot Jonathan Kuminga in at the 3 and let Draymond play the 4? And Mark,
there's a lot that needs to be done, right? There's a lot that needs to be done. Like Gary Payton, if you're bringing in Melton, where's Gary Payton's role? I saw someone said that in the chat. And, Gary
Payton's role as a defensive specialist coming off the bench. I mean, I loved what his role was in the 2022.
Well, Melton's a good defender. Melton's a really good defender. So it's like you have two similar players. Melton's a little bit better.
The Warriors need perimeter defending.
Yeah. I mean, stockpile, I guess.
Two good perimeter defenders is not going to hurt them at this point.
Yeah. I mean, they may be a decent defensive team when it's all said and done. But in that case, yeah. Podziemski does sound better. He does sound better in the point guard role when you're talking like that, with the 2 really good perimeter defenders and then 2 really good scoring point guards, with Pods being your Steph when he comes off the bench to get you some buckets. I don't hate that. Maybe Melton is brought in to be your starting 2 guard if that's the case.
Free Moses Moody, someone just said. Yes, 8089er. Free Moses Moody. I'm on board with that. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap things up, folks. We do have a time restriction and constraints based on the network and how they want to do things. So unfortunately, we got to wrap this thing up, but we're going to be here 5 days a week, continuing to break down the situation. There's a lot more to cover, a lot more to say. Chuck has been diving into some of the specifics in terms of the dollar amounts because it all is very confusing. Tomorrow, we are going to have the voice of the Utah Jazz, the radio voice, I should say, and the originator, the founder, the creator of this network, David Locke, here on the program to talk much more Lauri Markkanen. He has got the insight, and I'll be very interested to see what he thinks the fit for Markkanen could be with the Golden State Warriors. Now, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Folks, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate the time. Chalie, be well. Cincinnati Reds poster in the background. What's going on there? Okay, there we go. Get the
Klay
Warriors
Thompson.
hat up. Dude,
To
I've got
Klay Thompson. To Klay Thompson, hat tip.
Folks, I kept the sticker on it. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Isn't that supposed to be the cool thing? That's what the kids do. I'm serious. I was told that when I got this hat at the Warriors, when they won the title, actually, I was at Chase Center because they were on the road, but covering the Chase Center party. I got one of
Sound
these
like a
hats from the
millennial
staff.
right now.
Shout out to Raven Ritter and the PR staff. Got one of these. You know what? We'll remember the good times. They can't take the memories away. Appreciate you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, leave us a review if you enjoyed this. We will be back throughout the week, and we will see you then. Appreciate it, y'all. Have a good night.